Amway President Rich DeVos is a nationally known speaker. His talks have received many awards. Although he is in great demand as a public speaker, the majority of his speaking engagements are to audiences of Amway distributors and prospective distributors. Here, he discusses why Amway is the ideal way to achieve success in a business of your own. The co-founder of Amway Corporation, Rich DeVos.
We're just going to visit a little bit tonight about the Amway sales plan. Now, that's shocking, isn't it? I don't have any great speeches for you on motivation or, how to get your mental attitude all conditioned so you can set the world on fire, and how to change all negative people to positive people by pushing the right button in your brain someplace and turning you all around. But I just want to take the sales plan a little bit and take some of the features in it. It was developed through a period of over 25 years that this basic plan was done. And I know some of you are there tonight, you're relatively new, you're in the business, but you're not in the business. You'd like to believe it, but you don't believe it. You came here because you want to believe it, and yet you've gone out and tried to recruit people, and they look at you like you're crazy. Well, you probably haven't had that, but I've had that. See? And I get so excited about the plan that somebody says, well, how can you be so excited about a simple little thing like this? And so I took down what we considered all through the years some of the really special features of this program. I'd just like to run through them and show you why some of these things are mighty important. And the next time you're talking to somebody who's laughing at you or scoffing at you a little for being in this silly business, think of some of these things. Because once you get some of these things committed inside of you, people won't be able to scare you off or shake you out of this thing. You'll just charge right on through until you arrive at the goal you seek out of the Amway business. Now, some of us are luckier than others. Some of us are born into different households. I was fortunate in that I was born into a household where my father taught me some fundamental things that were important. One thing he always said to me is, there's no such word as can't. That's a pretty great thing. I never quite forgot that. I'd say, I can't do this. I can't do that. He'd say, you say can't once more and I'll knock your block right through that wall. Well, fortunately, he never did. But fortunately also, he built into us a concept of thinking in terms of what we could do, as opposed to so many households where the parents themselves become a party to the act, saying, oh, what makes you think you can do that? See? Or else you got friends who always say that to you. No matter what dream you get or idea you get, somebody says, oh, you can't do it. I know they did it, but what makes you think you can do it? See? Well, my background was one of always thinking in terms of what I could do. Well, the other thing that happened was my father kept talking to me about getting into a business of my own. That was the first point of my lineup of things. Now, the reason I put the feature of owning your own business is that Amway-type products are distributed through many means. But the concept of Amway is consistent with what we believe are the goals of millions and millions of people around the world, is to have freedom. Freedom is the most precious commodity in the world, and millions of people are seeking freedom. Now, there's political slavery, such as is practiced in various countries, where government imposes edicts, where government says, you can't be in business, and somebody else, because they know somebody, says, well, you can open the store, but nobody else can. And most countries in the world, many countries of the world, you could never have an Amway business because it's all controlled by somebody in the government who's going to decide who can be the businessmen in town. It's all controlled in the political swirl. So the concept of having a business of your own is unique to the free countries of the world, where you can come here tonight and all you do is join up with them and say, yeah, I want to be in business for myself. Well, that principle alone has got to be exciting. The mere knowledge that you can have a business of your own in Amway. But the stumbling blocks involved in having that are that most types of businesses require money. They require such an amount of money that although it's possible in this country and in other countries to get in business of your own, it's beyond the reach of most people. Well, those who got a little money or their folks had money, they can get into businesses of their own. But the guy who was just struggling to get along and make a living never has a chance to either build the credit or accumulate the cash. Well, I make this my number one point because I believe so many millions of people want it. And Amway is, to the best of my knowledge, the closest business opportunity there is in the world that is made available to people anywhere. And you know, when you think about talking to your friends or your neighbors or yourself, that you can offer them a chance to get in business for themselves, this has got to be something that shakes you up a little bit. So I know that's not a dramatic thing. I know you've all heard about getting in business for yourself. But think of it as a feature that's not only the chance to get in business, but that it makes it possible for you to get in business. And so you've read all the stories and you hear about all these successful people, but those are not always duplicatable by you. And so the Amway plan is one you can offer to anybody, anywhere. I don't care what economic level they're on. I don't care what their educational level is. I don't care what church they go or don't go to. I don't care what color they are. I don't care. I just don't care. We can offer everyone a chance to begin a business of their own. Well, my second point ties on to the first one, because there's basically two things that keep people from succeeding in business. Number one, as I talked to you about, is the economic aspect. The availability of enough funds to get established. Now, carry that a little further. Some of you say, I'd love to open a Pizza Hut. Well, go ahead and open a Pizza Hut then, if you think that would be so great. I got a lot of friends and people I talk to, and so have you. Someday I'm going to have a business on my own. Well, what are you waiting for? Well, why don't you do it then? Always, next year. And next year, it's the next year. So the economic availability of the Amway plan is what makes it potentially great, because you can offer it to anybody, anywhere. Well, as I say, the second point ties to it. Because the second reason people don't is because they are afraid to. So, I don't know how. I'd love to have a Pizza Hut, but I don't know how to make pizza. So I'd like to run a men's clothing store, but I just don't know anything about men's clothing. Or I'd love to run a gas station, but I'm not enough of a mechanic to make money in the back room. See? There's all sorts of business opportunities you think about, but then you suddenly couple that with the fact that they all take specialized skills and knowledge. They all are sophisticated. Like somebody says, I'd like to be a doctor. Oh, that's fine. I'd like to be a doctor. But you see, then I'm confronted with the problems of becoming one, which will involve 8 or 10 years of education, all the cost that's involved. So, you and I can talk about that all day long. But the odds in our making that a reality for us are beyond most of us. We either don't have the mental ability or the disciplines to sit down and study those books, or the skill in our hands to make it all happen, or whatever it might be. So, there's just no sense in talking about some of those things, because the degree of training that's required is so tremendously sophisticated. And so then comes Amway and solves number 2 problem. We have a little kit that has all the answers in it. If you have nothing more than an Amway kit, you can become a Crown Direct in this business. That's something to think about. Now, you compare that with the medical problem or all the rest of it. You see, where you have to go off to school and get accepted and meet grade standards. And here's a bit, we don't run you through a mental test. We don't ask you what your IQ is. We just say, here's a little kit, and that means that in it are the seeds of the training program that's within the reach of each and every person in this room, and virtually everybody who has any ability to read and comprehend it all. I know Ruby Bowles, who lived up in Missoula, Montana. Some guy came through town one day, met her, told her about the great Amway business. She took the kit, signed up, and he left town. Never heard from him again. She took the kit, threw it in a closet. Maybe some of you got a closet where you left yours for a while. Some of you hide them under your bed. Some of you keep them in the trunk of your car because you don't dare tell your wife what you did. But one Sunday morning, Ruby was feeling low and depressed, and things weren't going like she thought they ought to, and she opened the closet door, and she saw that old kit sitting there. She opened up the kit and started reading the manual, and she got all turned on. She said, "This is fantastic. I can do this," she said. And sitting in the quiet of her own living room in Missoula, Montana, a little town in the mountains, Ruby Bowles read and comprehended the Amway sales plan and says, "Get me some of those," and started out the next morning telling people about Amway, and went on to build a very successful direct distributorship. And all she had was a little manual. That's what the kind of a business that Amway has. And you and I don't talk a lot about this as a feature, but you see, it's the seeds of success only because it's a program that you can make available to all those good friends of yours. And you don't have to run them through the third degree to see whether it's within their capability of doing this. Oh, I know you get hung up on things, Say, well, I don't want to sell soap, I'm a used car salesman. Somebody says, well, after all, I'm an engineer. I'm this or I'm a that. Hey, we sell soap for a very simple reason, folks. We sell soap because people buy soap. Did you know that? And it's a lot more fun to sell a product people buy than to try and sell a product people don't buy. And if you're going to get in the selling business, sell something people want. And so I listen to people, and they get all sorts of, I want I'm going to get in the real estate business. I don't want that little two-bit stuff. We offer not only a program that's within the reach of people, but a training program that is comprehensible by anybody. And as important as it might be to be in a group that has good meetings, as good as it might be to be benefiting you to have a sponsor who's helpful and who's got the answers and a lot of experience and carries a good stock, even in this business, if your sponsor lives in Michigan and you're here all alone, the difference in your success will not revolve around the training given, because success is gainable from the essence of a very simple little sales kit. Well, that's a second point. Not a big one. But remember it, because it is the essence of duplication. It is what makes it possible for those of you who don't even know how to spell chemistry to be highly successful in the chemistry industry. Well, my third point takes off a little bit on some of the exclusive features. We talk about the Amway business being a family business. Now, I realize that we have single people who are succeeding in this business. We have widows who are succeeding in the business. We have widowers who are doing great in the business. Those are all true. But I want you to see a dimension. Because even though you might be single or having to be the head of your household, whether you choose it or not, the great numbers of people who are married people and who are family people have found themselves going off in this direction. The guy goes to work here and the gal goes to work over here. Your lives tend to drive apart because of economic situations. You have a job here, he has a job there. You have your buddies that you run out with from work, and she's got the girl she goes out with over here. And you tend to find your family kind of floating in the middle. The Amway business is a family concept business. I was in New York one day making a speech. On the left of me was sitting the president of Avon. On the right was the president of Fuller Brush. This is a true story. And the guy from Fuller Brush says to me, he says, you guys at Amway, you really got it made. I said, what do you mean I got it made? He says, in Fuller Brush all these years, all we ever got was the fellas involved. But he says, you got both members of the family involved in the Amway business. Man, he says, if we could ever get the gals involved in Fuller Brush, we could really get this thing going. I said, that's right. And it wasn't 2 minutes later that the president of Avon said to me, he says, you guys really got it made. I said, what do you mean? He said, we get all the Avon gals involved, but we never get them in. And you get both of them in the business. Boy, he said, if we could ever find some way to get them both involved, we'd really go. It was about that time I told him we were going to catch up with him anyway. And he said, I don't mind your catching up with me, but don't expect me to sit around waiting on you. See? But, you see, the essence of what they were talking about was that they saw a dimension in Amway of the coming together of the family unit. But you know, Amway, through all of the days that Jay and I were in the business, we never sat down in Amway and said, well, if we get both of them involved, we'll do more business. But it always revolved around the fact that the core and the great strength of our country revolved around the family unit. And if we could build the business aspects of Amway on the family idea, we would do something to make the world a better place and also improve the economic situation for many people. Well, some of you have never even thought about that in Amway. But, just look around you tonight. It's all husbands and wives in the main. Couples, people together, working together in a family enterprise. John and Pat Hendrickson, who live in California, their children recently held an Amway rally. But you had to be children of Amway distributors to get in. And they had all the kids come in for a meeting. And all the kids got up and they got all their grumbles out about how the folks go out meet nights and put on meetings and then they go to conventions. And they said, you know, but they're working to build a business for all of us as a family. And then the different kids got up and told how they work to help build the family business. And one kid got up and said, well, I handle the telephone calls at our house. And when distributors call and place orders, I take the orders over the telephone or answer the questions and I take the messages. And somebody else said, well, I help because I serve the coffee at the meetings at our house. I serve coffee to everybody. Somebody else was busy, said, well, I help because I stand at the door and greet the people when they come into the house. And one of the other kids said, well, I help because I put the stock on the shelves. And somebody else said, I fill orders. And all the kids were telling how they were participating in helping to build the family business. And the younger one of the young kids got up and said, well, I sweep the floor in the stock room. Well, here's a dimension you and I miss so often in it. If you have been in the Amway business for a while and have gone to any of the rallies or conventions, you know when we started, we get to the hotel and say, hey, we want to have a meeting here tonight. We're going to have 500 people. Say, what's the room charge? He said, how many people you bringing? I said, 500 will be here. You can have the room for free. I said, hey, mighty nice of you. So we got there that night and got all the bars set up, man. He's counting a big, big take at the bar. But that's the only time you ever get a free room is once in this business. Because they quickly discover all the people go to the meeting and they don't all come and stand around the bars. Because you see, it's not a bunch of guys who are off at a meeting, but it's a family coming, working with other people together, and they didn't have to run around out of bars to find some way to console themselves. Fantastic business. If you are eligible for a trip to a seminar, we don't call up and say, which one of you is going? All of our award programs are geared to take both of you. That's an expensive business for a company, but it's still two people that go. Maybe the gal isn't too active in the business, maybe the husband isn't, but it doesn't make any difference. The concept remains constant. All family affairs. And you see, we know that this is one of the great secrets of this organization. It's an exclusive Amway thing. And a lot of you people work for a lot of companies, and you're sent here and you're sent there. But in Amway, you always go together. And it's a wonderful thing when you're talking to people who are trying to recruit them about how this one works. But when I look at the Amway plan and start to recount some of these things, a business of your own, complete training given to you, the family concept. These are in many ways exclusive with the Amway organization. But the next point has to do with income potential. Because virtually everybody who's ever worked and began to move ahead within a company suddenly found themselves cut off at the pass. And there are men in this room who suddenly began to make as much money as the management in the company. They quickly found the commission rate was changed, because they didn't want you making more than they were making. Or you suddenly found your territory was cut in half. Or some other way they found to change the deal on you, because they didn't conceive of anybody doing that well. Well, the thrill to me in the Amway business is to see you make more and more and more. What did somebody do? Sit around and figure out how to change the deal because somebody made crown? So, well, we better change the percentage now that somebody got that far. Why, we rang the bells and cheered and said, happy day, isn't that great? They're there, let's keep them there and keep them going. And as more crowns have developed in the business and other people are growing in the business, why, they've outgrown the awards that we offer. But we've never changed the compensation system. One night we had 8,000 or 9,000 people there. We had a bunch of people coming across the stage. They're getting diamond pins, and they get up and say, I just got a new Cadillac, and somebody else had just bought a new VW. I don't know. But, they're all talking about the bigger things that they had accomplished out of Amway, and somebody else had got a new home, and they mentioned that. And after the meeting, some gal came up to me down front, and she said, I'm glad for all those people that they could make that kind of money. But, she said, Amway's more important than that to me. She says, today school started, and I sent my kids to school today. And she started crying. She said, today was the first day my kids ever went to school with new clothes. The first time ever with new clothes. She says, up till now, they always took hand-me-downs. We always had to wear somebody else's cast-offs. And she said, I can't tell you how thrilled I was to watch them walk out of that door with a new pair of shoes on. Well, that's what Amway's all about. That you can take out of the Amway plan the very least or the greatest amount as you would choose. As I travel these days and look around, I see halls like this filled with young people in their 20s. Great numbers of them. Jay and I started selling Neutralite in 1949. I was 23 at the time. And the people in the Neutralite were amazed to think that young guys like this were in the business. And I'm thrilled every day because when I look at the people who are at the top of the Amway world today, most of them started when they were in their 30s or 40s. And when I see you young cats coming along and in your 20s, listen, you can't settle for crown. You better think in terms of when you personally sponsor 50 or 60 direct distributors. Somebody asked us the other day, what are you going to England for? What are you going to Australia for? And I said, because it's there. That's why we're going there. Because we must demonstrate the workability of the plan in various cultures and various parts of the world to prove that people everywhere are seeking what we have to offer, and we want to make it available to them, and that's what. You have no excuse to sit there anymore. And as long as you are physically and mentally able, it's your responsibility to do all you can. Neither Jay nor I have to work any more than you do. I mean, maybe a little less than you do. We work because there's work to do. I said that to somebody else today as we were driving along. Somebody said, well, if I get in debt, then I work more. I said, well, that's all right, get in debt, but I don't recommend it. You must learn to work more because there's work to do. You must learn to make more because there's other people who need your help. You must learn to recruit better. I don't care how successful you are, because there's other people who never knew they had a chance like we offer. That's why you must do it, because it's there to do. And when you work with that concept and that philosophy, everything else will come in place for you. So I want you to think in those terms. Well, my fifth point's a very simple one. I've already alluded to it. You can have a business of your own. We talked about the fact you can do it as a family unit. You can start on a part-time basis. How many deals have you ever heard about, or business opportunities have you ever heard about, where the guy says to you, I don't want you to get ahead of yourself, I don't want you to gamble, I don't want you to quit your jobs, I want you to start part-time, prove to yourself you can do it, and when the time comes to go full-time, you'll know it, you'll be ready for it, and you can move right on into it. Hey, simple little feature you forget when you talk to people. Make sure you assure them and reassure them that they get the same deal part-time as anybody ever got, no matter how many times they came in. Start on a part-time basis. Crawl before you creep, and creep before you walk is the way we do it in Amway, because we got time to wait. We're not going anywhere tomorrow. And so we keep saying, you just start. Just try and see what can happen to you. And as you develop your skills in the Amway business, well, it's unbelievable what had happened to you. And the list of people who are highly successful in this business is long. All started the same way, part-time, learning the business. Well, my sixth point has to do with health and accident. We talk about health and accident insurance, and somebody says, well, our company has a policy, and all that's fine. And if I get injured, there's workman's compensation, and that's fine. How many weeks will they pay you? 590? 7,644? 2? 4? 6 months? You know, if you were in Amway and you had a successful Amway distributorship, not a big one, successful direct distributorship, nice group of distributors in it, and you got sick, were unable to carry on for a while, it doesn't stop. Your people go on, keep working. Fred and Jan Sanborn singers fame, live in California. They're diamond directs today. They weren't at that time. Fred got hepatitis, was unable to work for an entire year. Couldn't carry on. During the course of the year, Fred's income increased. So did his volume. That's what I call health and accident insurance of the best kind. And when he was able to work again, he could pick it up from that level and build it on to greater heights. I gave this story one night, and a fellow came up to me, and he had his hair all off his head, and he had a ruby pin on. He said, I've been incapacitated for the whole past year. I've had brain surgery 3 times. He said, thank God we had a good Amway business going. He said, during the course of the past year, I've been in and out of hospitals, hospital bills like you wouldn't believe. I got them paid, and my income's bigger today than it was a year ago because we had an Amway business going. And because somebody didn't come down here and say, well, you're not putting out enough, Mac. I think it's time you were replaced. I can see some of you guys, you get sick. I'm sure what your companies will do is say, well, Harry's sick. Call up the house, say, Mary, Harry's unable to have been work for all these weeks. Why don't you come in and take his job and fill in for a while? And if Harry, if you're out for 6 months, you can go back, but don't think your job will be there anymore. They'll already have somebody else in there carrying on for it. That's true, isn't it? Because it has to go on. When you join the world of Amway, you got your own world going for you, too, and it all takes on a different look. Well, number 7 is a very simple one. It talks about transferability. You can own the biggest Ford Motor Agency. You can own the biggest car dealership anywhere you want to go, but the day you drop dead, baby, it's all over. You don't think so? You try it. You go ask your local Ford dealer. He'll tell you. He has a franchise to him and him alone. And the day he's unable to carry on the work, it's all over. Oh, a lot of times the kids take it over only because they had the money and because they were trained and because the Ford Motor Company said they could. Oh, when you have an Amway distributorship of direct distributors or above and you've got a successful business going and you are unable to carry on because you pass away, all we do is get the papers and all the income continues to your household. My personal sponsor, the gal who brought us to Neutralite, Chucky Moscon, she and her husband were both living at that time, recruited us in the business. Jay and I went on. We built a very successful Neutralite distributorship, and then we started the Amway business. All these years, Chucky's derived the income from our line of sponsorship. Her husband passed away about, I suppose it's 6-7 years ago now. Every Christmas she writes, just this word to thank you. Every month I receive my 3% money. I just can't believe it. Because she and her husband had the courage and the willingness to put forth the effort. And some of you young cats here, you better think about that one down the road. And right now you're healthy and well, and you don't worry about that. You just think about it. That what time and effort you're putting in now pays off in Amway for years to come. Some of you folks who are a little older, you've been with that outfit a little long, you better think about it. And if you get busy building an Amway business, there is no other business in the world that does it. There is no other business in the world that I know of that does this thing. You talk about exclusive features of a program. The Amway business has transferability to the survivor of 2. And after that, it can be transferred in ownership onto your children. And the income derived from the effort you folks are putting in today will go on to take care of your kids if something should happen to you. Well, maybe you never thought about that dimension of the Amway business. But it is something to think about. What a great thing when another member of the family could pick up an existing business and add to it and build it to new dimensions. Oh, I tell you, some of you have been sitting around this business, you've been looking at it, you've been wondering it for real, you wonder if Amway's going to last. Amway's not really on trial tonight. Maybe you are. There's not much question about where Amway's going. You've got to answer these questions that I'm putting to you personally. Is something like this important to you? Could you use something like this? And what have you been waiting for? You're afraid because your Aunt Susie laughed because you said you were in the soap business? Is all that's standing between you and the things I've been talking about? Because the guys at work chuckled? Because somebody said, oh, what makes you think you can sell? And that's keeping you from getting on with it? Your mother-in-law's chuckled? Is she going to take care of you when you can't work anymore? Is she going to put your kids through college? How many thousand a month is she going to pay you? Nothing like this business will pay you if you get off it and get on with it. By the way, on transferability, I got one more story I want to tell you. A young gal came to meet us, holding a young baby in her arms, and she says, "You remember me?" I said, "Yes, I remember when we were here last time you came to meet us, you and your husband." She said, "Well, I don't know if you know it or not. My husband's passed away since then." True story. You know, she says, he got in Amway because he had cancer and didn't have long to live. But he wanted us to have something to carry on. He was 26. And so we worked awful hard to get the thing started. And she said, "You know what? We've made direct since then." She said, "When he passed away, all the distributors were there." She said, "You wouldn't have believed it." And she said, "Our business is going on," and she handed me the baby and said, "This baby's going to have a future because he and we took this thing and did something with it when we had a chance." That's a tearjerker. And they're continuing to work and build their business because they were forced to see some of what I'm trying to communicate to you as to what this business could mean to you. Well, my 8th point hits on no favorites. You know, it ought to be something for you to think about, that I don't care if it's my kid or Jay Van Andel's kid, nothing can cut in between you and where you want to go. Oh, isn't that sweet to know? Sweet to know that when you reach for the stars, nobody can cut in on you. Because nobody can change the deal on you or play favorites on you. And most of you worked in outfits when you're about to get a promotion, you're sure and shooting. They transfer somebody in, or they send the son-in-law in, or the superintendent had a buddy some other department, and there you stand with egg on your face one more time. Oh, I tell you want to know something else? In the Amway, you talk about exclusives. The Amway Corporation has no house accounts. I've had companies come in and offer to buy $1 million worth of Amway from us. I said, "I won't sell you." A friend of mine recently came over and said, "Well, Wally Buttrick from Grand Rapids was trying to recruit him, you know. Give him the big story and get in Amway." He's a preacher friend of mine. And hey, he says, "You ought to get in." This guy goes, "You know, Rich, if I get in, I'm going to get under you, don't you?" So he said, "Don't, you know, I'm listening to Wally, but, you know, be assured I'd come in under you." And I said, "I don't recruit people. I wouldn't take you under any circumstances. I'm prohibited from recruiting. The Amway Corporation doesn't recruit. No Amway employee can recruit. And it's within any management job. And the reason they can't do that is so nobody within the company is tempted to take any lead that would come from any place in the world and sneak it off and then follow it up personally. Any lead that comes to the company has to go back to from whence it came, to the organization. Every person who joins the world of Amway joins through somebody like you. There are no shortcuts to the top. There's no special privileged positions. You talk to him, this guy's a big sales manager, and he calls. I get those calls every once in a while. I manage to get through a secretary and say, "Hey there, DeVos, I'm sure you guys have got a special place for somebody like me. I've been in selling and marketing for quite a while. I got quite a few salesmen under me, and what kind of a deal you got?" I said, "Oh, I got a dandy. I got a dandy spot for you." "Who told you about it?" "Says so-and-so. So go back and see him. That's the dandy deal I get. That's the only deal I get. I got no other deal. No other places." Hey, you don't think that's a big point? You're applauding to it. Think about it. Think on these things I'm telling you. They are unique and special and exclusive in the world of Amway. And I cover them because some of you haven't caught on yet. You haven't got the message, or else you'd be doing more. I came down here to help you get to do more. I kind of What I'd really down here do is put a burr into your saddle, or to put a stone into your shoe. And if you don't want to do any more, listen, we understand, okay? I just want you to make sure if you decide to quit the world of Amway, at least you go out knowing what you quit. And then you go home and stew about it. Your business. My last point, I just talk a little bit about Amway. It won't take long. Some of you wonder whether Amway's going to make it. Listen, we just started our 69th building program. Another 110,000 square foot building. We're going to make Ada the center of the world of free enterprise. And we're going to have people from all over the world coming to Ada, Michigan to find out how it really happens and what can happen when you let people have a chance to make free enterprise work for them. This business comes closer to making free enterprise a living reality for the people in the street than any other business that's ever been put forth in the land. And that's what it's all about. Well, hey, you don't have a company that just peddles a little soap. We're manufacturers and international distributors on a grand scale. And we have no customers but you. Literature and sales aids like you've never seen. Research and development, quality control. Every bit of merchandise that hits the door at Ada goes through a quality check. Product lines? Why, we talk about saturation. The only thing I know is we're farther behind now than when we started. Because when we started, we sold one all-liquid detergent. That's all we had to offer to people. Today we got a full line of household products, car care products, cosmetics, and you name it, baby, and we got it. Everything. Yeah. Tremendous. You want to get in the business? You want to get in the business that's in all the businesses. Get in the Amway world. And more than that, you can build a distributorship in England, all across the great country of Canada. You can build a distributorship in Australia and other countries of the world as we go. You getting the point? Hey, this is really something. Recently, somebody who runs a plan somewhat similar to ours, came out with an announcement that they were going to go international. And they had to announce their international sales manager said, it's a shame, of course, that our existing distributors won't be able to participate in the program, but being that it's in other countries, it's just not possible to do that. Oh, it's possible. They just didn't want to do it because they didn't have you in mind. They weren't dedicated to making sure that you went wherever that company went. And that's what Amway's dedicated to. That where we go, you go. Because we're partners together, and that's what it's going to be. Well, saleable products, international. Shoot. I want to end on one simple point. You can do it. Because, you see, I can talk about all these things, but yet knowing within you that, it sounds good, big shot. But I ain't never done nothing like this before, and I don't know if I can. I'm going to tell you something. You can. I know you can. And you'll never know either until you try. And I know one thing. If you try, you will. I just know that. You got to know it. You got to try it because you got so much to lose by not trying. You got so much to gain by trying. You got to have a go at this, my friends. And if you're in it, you got to start telling your friends about it, because some of them don't know the dimension, the breadth of the Amway program. Well, Charlie and Elsie Marsh blazed the trail when they made Crown. They built a new image for people. Art and Ollie Charlton made it. Jim and Sharon Jantz from Vancouver, British Columbia made it. To me, that was a great achievement. Not only because they made it, but because this was the first Crown outside of the United States. People who made it in a different country and proved you could do it there. They just took the plan and went with it and built this fantastic business. They started in the basement of an apartment in the little town called Three Hills, Alberta, Canada. The nearest warehouse was 4,000 miles away. He was teaching school at the time. And he said he had one old chair in there, and they kept an old blanket over it, hoping nobody sat on it so the springs wouldn't hit him too hot. Maybe you got a chair like that. That's how Jim and Sharon started. It's a challenge for you, but it's a thrilling thing for me to relate to you. That Jim and Sharon, who taught school in a little town up in Canada, could take the Amway plan with great hardships and problems and make it happen to them. So you see, I know it can happen to you. The only reason you're not doing it is you haven't made up your mind to do it. I hope you're ready to make up your mind to do it tonight, because if you are, all the things I've been talking to you about can happen. But it takes a belief. It takes a faith. And tonight I wanted to give you some of this to strengthen your faith, to where you can say, I can see it, Rich. I get the point. I didn't really see the dimensions of Amway until now. But now that I see them, I know I got to get on with it. And I have a little poem I close with it. It's entitled Faith. It says, doubt sees the obstacles. Faith sees the way. Doubt sees the darkest night. But faith sees the day. Doubt dreads to take a step, but faith soars on high. Doubt questions, who believes? Faith answers, I. And I hope you can say, I believe. I know that I can do it. You just let me go. You go and you do it. Thanks for coming tonight.